in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right, but we tortured some folks.
It's been more than a year since America admitted torturing people. We're trying to interview one of them. Ammar al-Baluchi is a high-value detainee in Guantanamo. He's accused of transferring money to the 9/11 hijackers. He can only communicate with the outside world through a rigorous government screening process.
Ammar has written back to us. We're going to go meet his lawyer now. He's got the answers to the questions that we wrote to him. Hi, James. Yep, we're just outside.
James Connell has represented Baluchi since 2008.
Hey, how's it going? Sebastian, nice to meet you too.
Much of what he knows is classified.
No, I'm not allowed to talk about the existence of black sites and to some extent what happened in the black sites.
Could we talk about the dark prison?
I can neither confirm nor deny that there is a dark prison.
Some details about the CIA's torture program were recently revealed by a Senate investigation, including, for the first time, the names of the men involved. But the world has heard very little from them so far.
That's his handwriting?
Yes. On his very first day, they shaved his head, and then they smashed his head against the wall repeatedly. He writes, "I would see sparks of lights in my eyes. Then all of a sudden I felt a strong jolt of electricity in my head. Everything went dark and I passed out."
That treatment was called walling. It was one of around a dozen interrogation techniques given legal approval after 9/11. But Connell says that and other methods used on Baluchi have left permanent damage.
Your client stands accused of involvement in things that have led to the deaths of innocent people. I mean, can you understand why there might not be a great deal of sympathy for interrogation techniques like this?
Torture doesn't have anything to do with sympathy and is bigger than any one individual or any group of individuals. Torture has to do with how a society chooses to organize itself. If another future president decides to use torture again, they already have an infrastructure built.
With torture re-emerging as a US election issue, we're trying to understand what's at stake by finding the men who went through it. These letters were as close to Baluchi as we could get, but there are others out there who received similar treatment. Many never even charged with a crime.
There was a coordinated campaign to silence the torture victims. The survivors of it have never had a voice in this process.
According to the Senate's investigation, the CIA's torture program involved 119 men from almost 20 different countries. The reasons for their detention are varied. Some were linked to Al-Qaeda. Others were labeled as terrorists by US allies in the region. Nearly a quarter were just wrongfully detained. At least 39 of the men were subjected to the very worst treatment. The CIA called it enhanced interrogation. We're in Istanbul to meet two of them. Mohammed al-Sharia and Khaled al-Sharif were both members of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, or LIFG, that opposed Muammar Gaddafi.
كانت الدكتاتورية يعني قوية وأنت لست حر في أي شيء فكان الوضع يدفعك لأن يعني تفعل شيء.
In 2004, the US State Department designated LIFG as a terrorist group. But Mohammed and Khaled were detained the year before that and say their battle was with Gaddafi, not Washington. When the CIA came for them, they were living in Pakistan with their families.
هاي طبعا الصور قبل في باكستان في بيشاور في نفس البيت اللي تم اعتقالنا فيه.
This was just before you were detained?
Yeah.
God, you look so young, Mohammed.
هذه أيضا مع آسيا كانت في ذاك الوقت عمرها 9 أشهر. هذه مع أضحية العيد. هذه الصورة كانت
Mohammed and Khalid were hooded, shackled, and flown to a CIA facility they call the Dark Prison.
أنا عشت في هذه الزنزانة سنة كاملة يعني ما زلت أحفظ تفاصيلها إلى الآن، يعني مقاساتها، أشكالها، بعض الكتابة على بعض الجدران كتبتها.
For the first several months, they were often kept completely naked.
كان يوجد في هذه الغرفة عبارة عن الباب يوجد في أسفله فتحة، هنا بطانية عملتها كوسادة، هنا في هذا المكان يوجد الحلقة التي عانينا منها كثيرا. أن ينام هو مقيد اليدين والرجلين في هذه الحلقة، ومع هذا يأتيك الحارس ويمر عليك ويطرق الباب ويدخل هنا الإضاءة حتى يرى أنك مستيقظ ولست نائم.
Mohammed and Khalid say they were chained to the walls to prevent sleep for days at a time.
الحلقة هذه نجلس يعني هكذا، اليدين اثنين والقدم معهم قدم، ايه 3 مع بعض. حتى قضاء البول يعني في مكانك. كانت هناك ايضا الزنزانة الصغيرة،
زنزانة أو هي قبر بالمعنى، ويوجد هنا القضيب الذي هو معلق في أعلى السقف، وهذه طبعا كلها ملطخة بالدم.
يمكن أن تقول أي شيء فقط يعني حتى يعني تتخلص من هذا العذاب، يعني حتى شيء لم تفعله.
أنا كنت أخطر شيء أشعر به أن هؤلاء ليس لديهم أي خطوط حمراء، مستعد يفعل أي شيء.
كان يعني يقولون لنا نحن نستطيع أن نقتلكم الآن ولا أحد يعرف أين أنتم ولا من قتلكم.
During the interview, we were told the men didn't want to go into everything that had happened to them.
كانت معاناة كبيرة جدا الحديث عليه أيضا.
It's hard to talk about it.
More than half of the CIA detainees are thought to have spent time in what Mohammed and Khalid call the Dark Prison. Officially, it's codenamed Detention Site Cobalt. It was hard to believe that this place not only existed, but was purpose-built by the world's premier intelligence agency.
When the CIA Inspector General sent a team to the site, they found one detainee who, as far as they could determine, had been chained to the wall in a standing position for 17 days.
The official CIA records cited in the Senate's report, even with redactions, read like a horror film. Isolation in total darkness, constant deafening music, rectal rehydration, keeping detainees in coffin-shaped boxes. The chief of interrogations said Cobalt was the closest thing to a dungeon he'd ever seen. Despite their treatment, the US never charged Mohammed or Khalid with a crime. The experience, they say, still haunts them in flashbacks and nightmares.
أنا في كثير من الأحيان يعني أكون جالس مع الأسرة يعني أنفصل عنهم تماما، يعني شعوريا أنفصل عنهم تماما وأغرق في هذه الذكريات المؤلمة. يعني كثير من الأحيان الأطفال يتساءلون يعني ليش أنت بابا دي ما تسرح؟
I mean, do you think there will ever be a day when you tell your children what their father has been through?
لا أظن. لا أظن.
Islamabad, Pakistan. After 9/11, the CIA was operating in the open here, picking people up and taking them to black sites. Mohammed and Khalid were captured not far away. One of the most frightening things they told us is that interrogators warned them they could die in the prison. And that if it happened, nobody, not even their families, would know about it. It turns out that did happen to someone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so we're on. That was Dr. Garrett Bahir. He was detained by the CIA in 2002 in a huge raid that took place here in Islamabad. He rarely speaks to the media, but he said he's going to meet us first thing in the morning outside the house where the raid took place.
Pakistan has often been a refuge for groups engaged in the conflict next door in Afghanistan. After 9/11, some of those people became CIA targets.
Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. So it's on this street.
Yes, please come in.
Okay, great. We'll follow you.
Okay, please.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you. Sebastian.
Dr. Bahir was part of an Afghan organization called Hizb-e-Islami. The group itself has never been on the US terror list, but members of its offshoots have.
They came from this way, actually. This road from here up to there, it was blocked. And they were about 200 people. Police and intelligence guys and Americans.
Americans
Yeah,
as
yes,
well?
yes. It was 2 o'clock midnight.
Bahir was handcuffed, hooded, and taken away, along with his friend and former driver, Gul Rahman, who years earlier was a bodyguard for the group's leader. That was the last time Bahir saw Gul alive.
That's him, huh?
They were flown separately, in hoods and shackles, to detention site Cobalt. Gul was beaten and doused in cold water by CIA interrogators. On November the 19th, 2002, he was left chained to the floor of his cell, half naked. In the morning, Gul Rahman was found dead. The CIA listed hypothermia as the likely cause of death.
So this is a letter from his daughter. I said that, my dear father, I'm waiting for your coming. زما په زړه کې دا سوال پیدا کاوه چې آیا هر پلار به خپل اولاد ته دومره ګران وي؟ هغه پلار چې نه یوازې زموږ پلار و بلکې د هر مظلوم او یتیم پلار و.
Gul Rahman is the only detainee known to have died in the CIA torture program.
There's no justification. He was a human being. He was a father of 4 or 5 daughters. He has an aging and ailing mother.
Gul's family has never spoken on camera. They live in an Afghan refugee camp near the tribal areas. It's hard for foreign journalists to go there, but Bahir has offered to take us.
I think this will go in here.
As a tribal elder, he's told us he can guarantee our safety.
Attach this.
But he wants us to keep a low profile.
It's beautiful, this thing.
Yeah. Nice.
Great.
Yeah. I will just ask my people to wait there in the gate. They are not going to inform the people, but just to wait in case something happens, huh?
So there's a couple of checkpoints leading into the camp, and there's a bit of concern that we might be stopped. Dr. Bahir is calling ahead and trying to let his guys know that we're on our way.
Bahir is worried about attracting attention. At several points, we're told to hide the camera.
Down, 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 down.
Eventually, we pass through the last Pakistani checkpoint. From here on in, we're on our own.
So all of this area is under
It's under our command.
your command.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
This is actually the camp itself.
Yeah, it's a huge camp actually. This is Burkha.
And the armed.
Yeah, they are our own people. They are here for your security.
It's a short drive to the Rahman family home.
That's Habib.
Yes, Habib, yes.
So that's the family's house,
Yeah.
right there.
Gul's brother, Habib, took over care of the household when his brother disappeared.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you. So this is Gul's house, and his wife and mother still live here, and his 4 daughters. We're just trying to work out if we can speak to them on camera.
Eventually, we're invited to come in with the camera.
Salam alaikum.
Gul has been dead for more than a decade now. But this seems like a house still in mourning. For Gul's mother, one of the most painful things is that her son didn't get a proper burial. She says the Americans never returned his body. In fact, it turns out the family went for years without knowing anything at all, despite relatives continually approaching the authorities.
IRC دفتر سره سری مستر دفتر سره کرزی صاحب ته ورغی هر چاته چې ورتل امدا جواب ورکاو چې نسته مونږ سره نسته مونږ خبر نه یو پاکستان کې نیولې مونږ خبر نه یو ولې مونږ سره د سيزونو مکو ولې هر چا جواب راکاو چې نه نسته د خام د امریکانو نیولې ولې د سیوک.
The Americans had not only detained Gul, he died in their custody. Yet Habib showed us communications from US officials years after his death, simply stating that they weren't holding him.
Yeah, it says they advise that no person of this name is currently being held. And this was in 2004 when they got this letter.
Yeah.
When did they actually learn of Gul's death? Which year
Just
was
a year
it?
ago.
Just a year ago?
Yes.
The family says nobody from the CIA has ever contacted them about Gul's death. Habib only learned how his brother died from news reports. He's kept the details hidden from their mother. He says it would break her heart if she knew.
بس حالا تیر کرا باندې هو سخت هغه وا خو صرف زه اوس دوی ته دا وایم چې تاسو من هیڅ یو بشر یا مسلم یا غیر مسلم هر شي چې هغه ونیول شي په یخ کې وزړول شي بده هغه دوی ویني دوی باندې به څه تیر شي هغه شی په موږ هم دي په تاسو به څه تیری.
We couldn't find anything in the report about Gul Rahman's body, but it's likely he was buried close to the facility where he died. We know that was detention site Cobalt. And based on our interviews with detainees, we believe the dark prison and Cobalt are the same.
So many of these details are redacted that it's hard to know the exact spot of where the prison was. But from the accounts of detainees who were taken there, we now know that country X was probably Afghanistan.
This is Kandahar, Afghanistan. We've managed to contact 2 men here who say they were also in the dark prison. We're hoping they'll help us confirm its location.
So the man that we're trying to find here in Kandahar was detained at around exactly the same time that Gul Rahman died in CIA custody.
The CIA believed Shawali Khan was a threat to the US, but they also picked up his brother Nazar.
Nice to meet you. Sebastian from Jazeera. Nice to meet you.
Nazar is one of 26 men the Senate investigation found were wrongfully detained.
Nice to meet you, Nazar. Sebastian from Jazeera. Nice to meet you.
Yet, even though he didn't meet the standards for detention, interrogators recorded Nazar's crying and used it to threaten his brother.
ناري وای مال سک صد خیر و خیراتی شي نسته اوه تر دا څنګه زايدي د پازاب یم چشتي داسي ویل.
Their stories echoed those of others we'd spoken to about the dark prison, but they had some new details.
Can you give us any information on exactly where the dark prison was located? Anything at all?
خو باندې خانه ماته د سینور معلومیږي نه چې بیا ورسته مال ته ځای پښتنه کړی ده دی وای دا د میدان د خجرواش میدان سره وتلې ده.
Some people say that is the place, this one here, where people were being held.
Do you think the prison was that kind of size? I mean, is there any details that you can remember?
Shawali Khan's descriptions matched others we'd heard, and Kais, our producer in Kabul, says people there knew it as an old brick factory. He says he can take us there.
So there's the airport there.
Exactly. So now we will make a turn.
To the left?
To the left.
It's no longer a CIA black site, but the area is still used by Afghan intelligence.
So it's a big secret place that they don't want anyone to know what is going on inside.
What would happen if we got caught filming?
We would be definitely arrested, and for 72 hours they could keep us without telling anyone.
We're going to try to film, but only from inside the vehicle.
It's still very risky, but we can take the risk.
It's impossible to confirm the exact location. But Kais says most Afghans believe what detainees refer to as the dark prison was once here.
Do you see the tower? That's the first security tower.
That's the perimeter of the base?
Yeah.
From satellite maps, it looks like the original factory building is gone. There's now a large compound of new buildings, the white ones you can see in the distance.
That's among those buildings you see.
Right over there, where there's
over there, yeah.
Small buildings.
Yeah.
That's the exact spot.
The exact spot of big factory.
Huh. Yeah.
It's eerie to be here, after talking to men who likely arrived at this same spot in hoods and shackles. If you were driving down this road on any given day, it's as if none of this ever happened.
Okay, so it's obviously a really highly secure location, and I think one of the guards just saw us, so we should probably move. But having heard all of those stories, to finally see the place that we understand is the location of where the dark prison was, it's just a weird feeling. But yeah, let's definitely go now.
The CIA declined to give us an interview or answer specific questions we sent them. In fact, the agency wouldn't even confirm the dark prison ever existed.
So this happened more than a decade ago to a small group of people, some of whom considered themselves enemies of the US. Why should ordinary Americans care about this?
اليوم حدث علينا نحن هذا الأمر، غدا حيحدث على ناس آخرين، لربما بعد ذلك يصبح جزء من المواطنين الأمريكان يشكلون خطر على الحكومة الأمريكية، فتتخذ معهم هذه الإجراءات. الموضوع أن الحكومة الأمريكية خرقت العهد بينها وبين المواطن الأمريكي.
The prison itself may have been erased from the map completely. But the men who spent time there say what was done to them will live on in their minds forever.
هذا الطبيب عندما كان يمارس، أو هذا المحقق عندما يمارس تلك الأفعال القذرة، هل هو مرتاح نفسيا؟ أنا أخاطب نفسه الآن، أخاطب الآن ضميره. هل ما فعلته يتناسب مع إنسانيتك؟